Welcome to Luxuriously Poor. Thank you guys for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. You've come to the place where if stocking is a mistake, then at least it's a mistake we can eat. Now, today I want to discuss with you spaghetti, something I've not really cared much for storing. And I'll explain in a minute why I didn't like the idea too much of storing spaghetti. But I found the best way to store it is actually in a glass jar. This is a half-gallon pickle jar. And a friend of mine, her daughter eats a lot of pickles, and she would give me the glass jars. And you can see, I would just put the spaghetti in there. And I put the top on it, and I put it on the top shelf behind a lot of things, so it kind of stayed dark there, and it's cooler there. And that's how I store my spaghetti. Now, I never stored much spaghetti because I did not feel like most people did that spaghetti was a good option to store. I felt it required too much water to cook it, to boil it. It many times required way too much, I felt, spaghetti sauce because, you know, I mean, some people may feel that if they spent $3 or $2.50 on one can of spaghetti or one jar of spaghetti sauce. I don't want to use the hunts that's in the can because tomatoes do not do very well in cans, glass or plastic, because they're acidic and they don't do well in metal. So you'd have to store glass or plastic. At least I feel that way. Glass or plastic is the way to go. And I felt most people that I know, when they make spaghetti, oh, you got to put 2 jars. Well, you're looking at $5 for 2 jars of spaghetti sauce, and that means a whole lot of storing when it comes to having enough of even a 6 month supply. If you made it once a week, you're looking at 2 jars, and most people will use a pound of spaghetti. So I just, for me, did not feel that it was a really good option. But I still had some and wanted to use it. And I really began to think, is there a way that I could make this something that would be a good option to store? Because in general, spaghetti noodles and spaghetti sauce is not that expensive. But the problem is, if everything is falling apart, water is going to be it is going to be very hard to get your hands on. And we all know it takes quite a bit to boil spaghetti. So, what are you going to do? Well, this was my solution to the problem. Now, I'm going to show you how I do it. I had a fourth of a pound, I guess, of a box of Barilla spaghetti. I had a jar of spaghetti sauce, and I'm pouring half of it into a slow cooker. Now, I am going to break the spaghetti in smaller pieces, and I'm going to put it on top of that spaghetti sauce. Okay, now, here's where a lot of people, and I'm going to tell you that a lot of people will throw 2 jars in here. I'm not. I'm putting 1 jar, and if I felt I needed more, what I would do is open a can of crushed tomatoes and add to it. But I'm going to go this route first, all by itself, and I'm going to add a dash of Italian seasoning to it. And that's it. I will put a cup of water, or a cup and a half of water. I'm going to add that to this. But like I said, if I thought I needed more, I would not use another jar of expensive spaghetti sauce for $2.50. I'd just get a can of crushed tomatoes and throw in there. That's what I would do, or chopped. And I've made it that way also. See, I've played with this recipe, and so I've even added some canned tomatoes to it. And it's wonderful because I made more of it. Testing, playing around with the recipe, trying to figure out what would be the best for my family. Now, I know that this will feed 3 people easily. Now, I would tell you, check your spaghetti. Move it around a little bit because sometimes it has a tendency to clump a little bit, okay? So you want to move it around to kind of separate up the noodles. And You may feel like you need to add just a touch more water, or maybe you want to add a. I mean, if you've already added a can of tomatoes and a jar of tomatoes, spaghetti sauce, I don't think you need to really add much more. I would stick with just adding a little bit of water to it if you felt it was too dry, but that is it. There's no need for us to overdo this. Now, I have some hamburger meat. This is maybe a half a pound, maybe. I'm going to brown it up, and what I'm going to do is I will add it to the spaghetti. I love the way this recipe works because all I need is a cup, maybe 2 cups of water to put in that spaghetti to cook it. And I'm going to tell you, you know those drinking bottles that you get that people are crazy about buying 24 packs? One of those would do the trick when it comes to cooking spaghetti in a slow cooker. At least it does for me. I'm not going to get fancy with it. I'm not going to spend the money that people will on meatballs and all kinds of stuff. And if I didn't have the hamburger meat, I really wouldn't care. I've made spaghetti hundreds of times with no meat at all in it. Just a jar of spaghetti sauce over top. But I'm going to add this to the spaghetti. And then I'm going to do something else with this. Oh, yes. To me, this next ingredient really makes it taste so, so good. Now, I've added the spaghetti, the hamburger meat, but cheese. Oh, you gotta have cheese with spaghetti, that's for sure. And I have cheese frozen, and I try to keep enough cheese frozen to do me for a few months. I really do. Now, I'm careful what I use it with and how much I use it. Now, I put the lid back on it, and what will happen is that cheese will really, really begin to melt. Doesn't that look great, though? I mean, it really does. I am so surprised. I really am. That I was able to make this spaghetti so inexpensively and with hardly any water. Just one of those drinking water bottles, and that's it. Cup and a half. Keep an eye. You may feel like you need to add a little more than that, but that's it. Or a can of tomatoes, chopped tomatoes. I didn't use any of that. I used 1 jar of spaghetti sauce, and I can tell you that this spaghetti fed 4 people. Now, I definitely will be storing more spaghetti and more spaghetti sauce. The noodles and the sauce, because, like I said, I really wasn't storing it because I did not feel it was a good option in my situation. And here it is. Oh, this is garlic bread I made from my homemade bread. I hope this will help you if water becomes a serious issue in the future. Maybe you could still make that favorite dish of spaghetti in the end if you try this recipe.